Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today I'm going to be playing Total War Attila. This is part 4, is it, of my Let's Play of Total War Attila, playing as the Eastern Empire here. When we last left off, the Persians had launched a massive counteroffensive against us when we were besieging the city of Nisibis. We fell back to the west, but are still in the province of Nisibis, and I'm sure I'm butchering the pronunciation there. And the Persians have come after us with over 6,000 men, about 6,300 men to our 2,600. So we're outnumbered pretty heavily, more than 2 to 1. Our only hope here really is that our missile troops decimate them enough to hopefully cripple them to the point where they can no longer effectively advance. Because here's the catch. This army of ours, 2,600 men, this large, ferocious army, is 2 of our 4 legions that are based in the eastern provinces of the Eastern Empire. We have 7 legions total. We have 1 in Egypt. We have 2 in the Balkans, 1 in the capital, and 1 in kind of northern Greece, southern Serbia, whatever that is. And then we have 4, 2 in Anatolia and 2 in the Holy Land or in Palestine, Syria area. And 2 of those legions, 1 in the Syria area and 1 in Anatolia, kind of Turkey, modern-day Turkey, united to try and take Nisibis. Well, the Persians came up, drove us back, we withdrew, and now we're here. We withdrew from Nisibis, and the Persians followed us. So 2 Roman legions, 2/7 of the entire Eastern Roman Empire's military are located in this battle, and they are outnumbered more than 2 to 1 against the Sassanian Empire, or the Persians, or whatever the heck you want to call them. So, yeah, I guess we'll see what's going to happen here. Now, with the enemy outnumbering me so heavily, I've decided I'm going to kind of... This map seems to be tilted, oddly enough. The map seems to be tilted upwards, and my hope is to kind of form a line here in the rear of the map to kind of help maybe refusing our flank on one end here as I set this line up, having our spearmen more or less up front, our kind of a fonantati or whatever they're called, spearmen, which are basically barbarians in the service of Rome, my cohorts on the right flank to protect the flank, and then stationing missile troops behind the front line so that when the enemy comes up and charges us, they will continually get hit by barrages of missile troops, hopefully enough to weaken those attacks, kind of like running into machine gun fire before you hit the front line, and continuing, or I guess maybe artillery fire, shielding you at the front line and then kind of hitting you as you move forward, and then once you're engaged, still hitting you. So that's kind of the idea, is to just keep hitting them with missile troops. Unfortunately, missile troops run out of ammo, so that's going to be a drawback. We do have some onagers. They're mercenary onagers here. Hopefully they can take the enemy down to size and take out some of those units as they're advancing, and maybe, just maybe, the enemy reinforcements won't all deploy and we'll have a more even fight, but I guess we'll see here. We're going to form our cavalry up on the flank, the right flank, so that if the enemy does go straight for our line, we can charge into their flank, and if not, more likely I think the enemy horse might come straight for our cavalry, but at the very least, deploying them on the flank gives them the ability to charge forward or protect our flank should the enemy try and move around it and disrupt them and buy our infantry time to reposition. Meanwhile, we've got a whole bunch of missile troops. We've got some javelin soldiers, and in between our archers and our front line, archers in the rear, javelin in the middle, kind of spearmen and heavy infantry up front, or I guess they're really medium infantry. I guess the cohorts are kind of heavy infantry. But you can see here forming up the cavalry on the flank, maybe not quite as tilted in. We don't want to expose their flank should the enemy decide to go around us. And yeah, that's the general premise of our setup here. We'll put 1 regiment, if we're going to call them that, on our other flank, and mostly set up here, almost ready for a battle here. Now, at the top of the map, it makes it look like, at least at the very start, we've got an advantage in terms of manpower, but as soon as those reinforcements arrive, that will change things pretty dramatically against us. Now, the enemy that we're fighting is going to be the Sassanian Empire. I'm sure I'm butchering the pronunciation of that. The Sassanian Empire is the successor state to the not the Persian. Good Lord, let's start over. The Sassanian Empire is the empire which occupies most of modern-day Italy. Oh my God. Maybe I should just have a silent video for the rest, because I can't talk. I could edit this out, but it's more fun, I guess, listening to me stumble. Well, maybe not more fun, but whatever. Yeah. So now that I'm done rambling to myself, and I'm going to leave that in there, because why the heck? Why the heck not? The Sassanian Empire is the successor state to the Parthian Empire, or Partha, or whatever you want to call them. Or maybe it was a kingdom, actually. They are in most of modern-day Iran. They're also in a good chunk of modern-day Iraq, up to the Euphrates River. And actually, I think a little, Euphrates and Tigris, but I think actually they're a little bit further west in this part. That was kind of more during Marcus Aurelius' reign. I'm pretty sure the Romans had fallen back some by that point. My map doesn't quite seem to go as far east as the Euphrates and Tigris, so it looks like Rome's fallen back a little bit. Anyway, I digress. So the Sassanian Empire is essentially the successor state to the Persians of old. There was the Persian Empire, and then they fell, as thanks to Alexander. There were some Alexandrian kingdoms, and then eventually there was the Parthian kingdom, or Parthian Empire, who fought the Romans quite a lot in the early days, kind of the Republic days. They fought, actually, Mark Antony, and kind of on the side of Caesar during the Civil War. And eventually the Parthians would wipe out a force under Crassus. A massive Roman force would be wiped out under Crassus. And, essentially the sides fought on and off again for hundreds of years. Then in the mid-200s, so about 150 years before this game, because we're in 395 right now, in the mid-200s, the Parthian Empire actually was overthrown by a new dynasty. Same sort of ethnic group, same area, same kind of people, still very much Persian, but a new ruling family. And that's how the Sassanian, or however you pronounce it, empire was born. They would end up ruling Persia and much of the Middle East all the way until 621? No, 640? Somewhere around the 640s when Islam would rise up under the Prophet Muhammad and would end up basically conquering the Sassanian Empire, and what was left of the empire essentially became part of the first Islamic Caliphate. Now, interestingly enough, if you actually look at the Roman Empire's history, a large part of their history, at least in kind of up to the point we're at now, there were really no established kingdoms that they would fight, at least since the early Rising. When Rome was a republic, it was a different matter. There were Greek city-states. There were a whole bunch of successor states to Alexander that they fought. So there were more kingdoms around then. There were certainly tribes, and I guess the Gauls, you could say, had a kingdom, although it's hard to say. I'm not an expert on Gaelic history. It may have been more of kind of a tribal sort of structure. I believe it was, but as far as established kingdoms with, capitals, cities, traditional forms of government, large organized estates, essentially, rather than, tribes that even if they had cities, they may not have been all that organized. Large organized states, essentially from the foundation of the empire under Augustus all the way until the period we're in 395, the Romans didn't face a whole lot of them. There were some that came and went, but a lot of the foes that the Romans faced were pretty tribal based. You could say the Franks and some of the French tribes certainly developed into that, but initially the Franks were kind of coming and going, or not coming and going, but they were being driven west by other tribes, so it wasn't as organized a state as traditionally you would think. So without insulting anyone, kind of I guess my point is, for a large part of the Roman Empire, the Parthians and then the Sassanians were the only established kingdoms or empires that the Romans faced throughout their long history. They would face tribes, they would face different groups of people, different ethnic groups collapse or what have you, and they would face other countries that might temporarily form an empire or a kingdom. But they were the only country, the only people that they faced constantly as kind of a rival state, a rival nation throughout their entire, or a huge part of the Roman history. Reason I bring that up is because it actually led to the Romans and the Parthians, and then later the Sassanians, establishing somewhat formal diplomatic relations. And while they were often fighting, they were really the only kingdom or empire that the Romans kind of considered. I wouldn't call them, they wouldn't consider them equals, but the Romans certainly didn't refer to them as barbarians, if you would. They looked at them in a different light. I don't know if I'd go so far as to say the Romans thought of them as equals, but they definitely viewed them in a very different light than they did pretty much anyone else they fought. They didn't consider them fully civilized, but they certainly recognized them as having some semblance of civilization in them. So I think that's interesting. Yeah. Meanwhile, the battle is not going, well, it's not going poorly, but I had intended to bring my horse archers up into the flank and fire into the flank, but I guess I engaged at too distant a range to have any meaningful success. Meanwhile, the enemy looked like they were bringing cavalry up on our flank, either to directly attack our cavalry or potentially just to try and flank us. I'm not sure, but as it stands, we've got a big cavalry fight going on the front right of this engagement here, with 3 units from both sides engaged, and the enemy infantry is coming up for what looks to be mainly a frontal attack. You can see here there's is that a 4th enemy horse unit? Or, no, still 3 enemy horse units charging up towards us. We were losing pretty heavy casualties, but we're inflicting heavy casualties on the enemy horse, and you can see there missiles flying everywhere. We've got our missile troops now engaged, as you can see just the vast hordes of enemy units there off in the distance, not yet engaged, but approaching our lines, certainly. I wonder if there's a way you can... I wonder if there's a way you can order archers to close closer, like to get into closer range before they actually shoot their arrows, so that way maybe you can get a better effect. The enemy was in loose formation too, so if you form your troops up in a loose formation, then archers and whatnot are less effective. But I wonder if there's a way to do that. That'd be interesting. You can see there one of the enemy spear units charged into us, lost over 50% of its men before it even reached our front lines. So our missile troops in the rear definitely doing their job with regards to those guys, inflicting some serious casualties on the enemy prior to them initiating contact with our lines. But not too optimistic here. My horse archers are more or less routed and driven from the field and out of ammunition as it is. And, or not out of ammunition, but certainly routed, as I was kind of not paying attention, and a regular enemy horse shock cavalry charged them, so that's not good. Meanwhile, my horses up front here are being kind of devastated in large cavalry action that the enemy deployed infantry to. We're certainly blunting the enemy force, but we're going to win. We'll leave it at that. The enemy is trying to move kind of horse around us to flank us, so we'll use our scout equipoise on our left flank to kind of hopefully derail that effort. Two of the enemy horse units there are archers, and yeah, unfortunately the idea of me using ranged units doesn't work as well against an enemy when that enemy is also an archer unit as well. Using our charging our melee troops into the flank of enemy cavalry should hopefully have some success there. You can see they're driving back some of our units in our front, and while we're driving them back, most of our ranged units are more than halfway through their ammunition, so yeah, the odds are not stacked in our favor. Now, one thing I wish, this game doesn't have it. I will say this, one thing that bugs me, and I didn't realize it entirely as I'm playing this. Some of my audio was recorded during the video, some was recorded after. Kind of, this is a mishmash video, if you will, of some recording during the fighting and some recording outside of the fighting. But one thing that I wish there was the ability to do was to effectively withdraw. You can lose a battle and be driven back, but if you've already retreated prior to the battle, your army gets destroyed. And I'm wondering why Creative Assembly has that kind of a mechanic, because it would be really useful to try and, you know, fight this battle, and then as soon as these things start turning out against us, just pull our troops out to maintain what is at this point the bulk of our army still being alive. I think the reason they didn't do that, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but in some of the early games of this series, you ended up getting stuck in situations where you were chasing enemy units around the map, and really small units would take forever to get destroyed. So it's kind of like, you know, you just keep retreating with a small force and never able to destroy an entire enemy army unless you get really lucky. So I wonder if that's a mechanic designed to limit that. You know, if you retreat, if you lose, you can retreat, or if you retreat before the battle, you can retreat, but you can't retreat twice. I wonder if that mechanic is there to try and, you know, prevent kind of sort of a whack-a-mole sort of method with armies never being destroyed. It's certainly possible, but I will say it does annoy me a little bit in situations like this, where it would be really awesome if you could do a tactical withdrawal and sure, inflict casualties on your army because you decided to pull out, you know, give you a higher casualty rate as the enemy simulates the enemy pursuing you. But in this battle, I'm stuck in a situation where I literally, you know, I'm kind of just better off fighting to the end, losing the entire army, because if I lose the entire army anyway, which I didn't fully recognize at the time when I was fighting this. I thought somehow I could still pull out, sort of. Obviously not possible, but that was kind of what I was thinking. So you'll see later I start to pull units out, recruit units, and that causes a total breakdown of morale, and the battle is, you know, goes because of that. Not that I'm spoiling anything, because I think it's pretty clear by now that this battle is not going to go in our favor, with massive amounts of enemy troops still not yet even deployed, and you can see that that strength bar is dramatically turning against me. You can see it's almost entirely red. The enemy is way, way, way outnumbering us. While my ranged units did a pretty darn good job, and still are doing a pretty darn good job of bringing down enemy troops and kind of evening the odds a bit, unfortunately, so are their units. Their ranged units are doing a heck of a job as well on ours, so it wasn't a terrible strategy, but it doesn't work as well when the enemy has a huge number of ranged units and you use up your cavalry in the first 5 minutes so that you can't drive their ranged units off, which is exactly what I did. So yeah, Genius General me, the historical gamer.
Our men run from the enemy. This is shameful.
I suppose if there is one positive, it's that this Persian army, which started the attack against us, is losing almost all of their melee troops pretty heavily. Their archers seem to be in very good shape, but their melee troops have been absolutely massacred. Oh, awesome. We killed the enemy general. Okay, so the enemy lost one of their generals, and their melee troops are being absolutely decimated. Looks like they might have 2 or 3 units left with maybe about half strength, and everybody else is more or less dead, and that's good for us. One thing that's annoying to me is the fact that the enemy units are all wearing yellow, and our little icons are yellow, so I keep thinking, oh my goodness, we still have troops left, and then I realize, no, those units have little red squares over them. Those are bad guys. So you can see here we've still got a fair number of archers ready for battle, but they're all out of ammunition, so they're not going to be all that effective in melee combat.
The men are running, cowards!
And this, yeah. So changing the formation of troops in the middle of combat is really stupid, and yeah, I haven't played enough Total War battles lately to really understand all of the details of everything. I'm kind of, getting back on the Total War horse. I played Barbarian Invasions a ton. I loved that game. That was my favorite Total War game of all time. Played Medieval 2 a fair amount, but really I've never played the Shogun games. I own them both. I just have never given them a go. And here's where I'm being stupid and not realizing, oh yeah, I already retreated. I can retreat again, right? I can just pull my troops out. And then I realized, well, I can't move them off the field. well, maybe if I just move them back and they retreat off the map, they'll live. Unfortunately, because I've already retreated earlier in this turn, that's not how it works. So there you go, decisive defeat, even though I probably could have inflicted a couple hundred more casualties on the enemy. You can see the enemy lost over 1,900 men. We actually... Oh, no, they lost 1,400 men. We lost 1,900, so they inflicted 500 more casualties on us. And then you also consider the fact that the enemy units wipe us out because of the way the rules of the game work. Our entire army gets wiped out here once we hit the check mark, which I don't understand at all. It's like, oh yeah, you've got these men left. But no, everyone dies for reasons. Yeah. So you see there, we get wiped out here. The enemy did lose about 1,400 men, so the army that was attacking us lost its commanding general and lost over half of its strength. The other Persian armies really didn't lose much of anything, but if there's one positive to be taken, it's that that one army. You can see there only has about 700 men left. Certainly not enough for that army to besiege any cities, but eastern, our eastern portion of our empire, the regions of eastern Turkey called Anatolia, and Syria and Palestine are very, very vulnerable. We have 2 undersized armies left to deal with them, but that's about it. We've lost 2 full Roman legions. Really, it was only the strength of really 1 full legion, but still 2 full legions. That leaves us with 5 in the empire. We've just lost more than a quarter of our forces in a decisive battle here. So if the Persians do press things, they've got over 4,500 men. We might have maybe 1,000 men left in the area plus garrisons. So they could certainly, roll up our line, take Amidia, take Edessa, maybe push further inland and be a serious problem for us. So that's, to understate it, that's not good. As we're ending the turn here. Yeah, so Eastern Empire is, I think it's fair to say, we are now in a crisis. Wasn't maybe to the level of a defeat like Massacrus or whatever that late Byzantine Empire battle was called, which over 40,000 Byzantines were wiped out, but certainly a disaster for the army. Now, Vindonius is promoted to being a military count. He's the individual who won that battle in the Balkans against the Gepids. And we can see here the Vandals have advanced into the Balkans as well, advancing south along whatever road that is in the direction of Constantinople. Meanwhile, we've got Alaric of the Visigoths still here near Trintonium or whatever it's called. The Visigoths have kind of gone docile. They haven't done anything lately against us.
Commander.
Meanwhile, in Italy, we still have the 12th Legion, which I think I'll move up toward. Maybe move it into Edessa. Edessa's got the strongest garrison of any of the cities, so if the enemy does come at Edessa and we put our troops in there, we might stand a chance of defeating them. If not defeating them, certainly bloodying them enough where, they'll take Edessa and not much else. Amidia, on the other hand, is far weaker. Edessa's more of a fortress city than Amidia, so we'll see what the enemy does. They've moved several armies inside of our territories here, and we'll go ahead and start trying to repair some of our losses immediately through raising of some mercenaries, and then I'm thinking we'll also recruit some troops here in Edessa, and hopefully, the Persians give us enough time so that we can replace a good deal of our losses. We can recruit cohorts or Luminai or whatever they're called, so we can recruit 4 of those here in one turn. We'll do that, and then maybe next turn we'll recruit some heavy infantry, some cohorts, to try and rebuild the army, the 22nd Legion. So yeah, that's the plan. Get some cheap, lower quality units to raise our numbers, and next turn start recruiting full-scale soldiers. If there's one positive of this all, it's that you can see there up near the top, we've got 3,800 in projected income next turn. Our upkeep went dramatically down with the loss of 2 full armies, as you would expect, I suppose. But yeah, my goal obviously did not come true. The goal was to bloody Persia enough, take Nisibis, and hopefully secure a peace with the Persians. That was my real goal, was to win a battle and convince them to go to peace with us, agree on a peace terms, because the Eastern Empire is not strong enough at this point in time to fight a 2-front full-scale war, especially against the only real kingdom, and I stress that, the only kingdom that's strong enough to fight with us. Barbarian tribes are, but they're in a very different situation because they're migratory, like birds. Yeah, so we're going to rebuild. We're going to restate the legacy of one of our units here. Instead of raising a new legion, we'll rebuild the 3rd Legion. We lost the 3rd and the 10th Legions in that battle. Rebuild the 3rd Legion, and we're going to make Flavius Arcadius Augustus a general in the field. He's more of a statesman. As I said, Theodosius, his father, was the last Western Roman Empire. He ruled both West and East, but he was the last Roman emperor, at least until the Eastern Empire was on its own. He was the last emperor of Rome itself that would be a general as well. But in this case, his son, Arcadius, is going to be a general because I said so. And we're going to raise some cheap infantry there as well because we can raise them quickly, hopefully get our army up to decent numbers. Again, I have no problem using soldiers as cannon fodder to slow the enemy down and hopefully get us a amicable peace. But that's what we're doing. We're kind of emergency damage control here in the east of our empire. Meanwhile, in the west, thanks to the increase in upkeep, we've got a little bit of money to rebuild some of the buildings that were damaged by the Visigothic raiders to try and help reestablish or reconstitute some of our public order by repairing some of those buildings. And then we've also got to deal with the issue that our taxes are causing people to be, in general, unhappy. So we may need to consider lowering those taxes, especially now that the loss of those soldiers has made our income situation a little bit better. Lowering taxes may be necessary because the last thing we need with barbarians in the west and barbarians in the east is to deal with civil disturbances. So that's something we're going to have to consider. Look through the stats here. Well, I don't know. We're in a bad situation. I think we fought, 7 battles, and we've won one of them against the Gepidas. So, again, please ignore my pronunciations. I'm sure they're terrible. But, yeah, we're not in a good situation. We fought 7 battles, lost 6, lost 2 generals. Yeah, at least one of those battles we did fight. We nearly won, and it was a really heroic defense despite losing. So that's where we're at right now. That's the situation of the Eastern Roman Empire. 1 full year into the game, we are now into 7. We're down to 396 AD. So we've played a full year. That's 4 turns. We're turn 5 now, and haven't lost any provinces, although certainly have lost quite a bit of men, material, and some cities being raided. But you can see their public order not very happy with our tax levels, so not sure we can afford to keep them at high. We'll drop them down to low. Hopefully that helps delay any civil disturbances. And I think the next move is going to be to move against Alaric and the Visigoths near Trentonium or whatever. They've been camped there essentially since they sacked the city a few turns ago. And the other half of the Visigothic army is advanced along the western coast of Thrace, so or is it Thessalonia? So Alaric is, the Visigoths only have half of their troops here. Meanwhile, we've got a full Roman legion with one of our legions has a good deal. What is that? 8 cohorts of heavy infantry. So definitely a strong force to deal with. You can see Alaric withdraws upon our advance. So what we'll do is we'll move these guys up and we'll attack him again with the rules that if you lose the battle, your entire army is destroyed. So that's good for us. The other thing is because he withdrew, he's now really close to Trimdentonium or whatever it's called. And you can see there we're going to get reinforcements, not just the, 500 or so men from the legion because we're overstacked, but also from the garrison of that city, which are currently recovering from a battle where I fought the battle. You can see there Alaric still hasn't recovered his troops. He's pretty low on numbers. A lot of his units are half strength because of taking Trimdentonium or whatever it's called. And as a result, we've got a huge advantage in terms of our manpower. We outnumber them by almost just shy of 3 to 1. But yeah, I could simulate the battle and we'd almost certainly win, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and play this battle out. So that's what we're going to do. However, we're not going to play this battle out in this video since we're almost to 30 minutes here. So what I'll do here is I'll just let you know the next video will be the battle outside of Trimdin-Tonium, and again, ignore my pronunciations. But in the meantime, I just wanted to say thank you for tuning in. I hope you're enjoying these videos. Trying to mix a little bit of history in at the start of the video and then a little more game talk kind of as we worked our way through. Let me know if that's something that you enjoyed. And thanks for watching, guys. This is the Historical Gamer saying, again, thank you for watching, and I'm out.